Hey everybody, hope you're doing great today. In today's video, I'm going to cover some basic tips for setting up your very first aquarium. Now, if you've never had a fish tank before, never had an aquarium before, this video is for you. We're going to go through the steps that you should go through in terms of getting the first tank, figuring out where to start. Do you start tank first? Do you start fish first? You can do either or. And so this video is going to take you through those steps as well as the equipment and the gear that you're going to need to make sure you have a healthy and successful fish tank. So there are two ways to go about this. One way is to figure out what size tank you want. If you've got a certain area in your house, you know you've only got this much space and you want to put that tank in that space. So you need to consider the tank size, you need to consider the stand size. These can get very heavy with all the water weight in there, so it needs to be in a proper area where the floor can support the weight, as well as out of the way of any traffic, any heavy traffic or something that's going to impact the safety of the tank. I mean, these are made of glass, so there's always a risk that they break. The other way to look at it is look at what fish you want. So let's say you want to put in, like in this case, I've got Lake Tanganyikan cichlids here. These are dwarf cichlids, the largest they're going to get, 2 to 3 inches at most. So you don't need to get a huge tank. You can go with a smaller tank, especially if you go with something like shell dwellers. Those are much smaller fish. You can even start off with a smaller tank, 20 gallon, 29 gallon. And if that's going to fit in the space that you need, that's a great way to go. So the best ways to look at this before you do anything is first figure out, are you interested in a particular kind of fish? Research those fish. What size tank do they need? What parameters do they need? Does the water that is provided to you by your local water department, does the water meet the needs of those fish? Or are you going to have to do a lot of alteration to the chemistry of your water to either soften it up or to make it harder, depending on what the fish needs are? That also can make an impact on deciding whether you want these type of fish or not. If you want something lower maintenance, lower effort, then the best thing is to look at your water quality, what kind of water you have, and match the fish with that. Versus if you are willing to put more time and effort into it, your water is soft, whereas you want to get fish that need hard water, you will need to adjust the chemistry of that water. You will need to add supplements in order to make sure that the water is good for your fish. So tank sizes, you can start anywhere from small, 5 gallon is a minimum I'd recommend. There's nano tanks. That's an entirely different category. But in this situations, we're looking at 5 gallons and up. This is a 55 gallon tank right here. There are even larger sizes than this. So if you're just looking to get one tank, try and go with the biggest one you can afford, the one that you have the space for, and that will meet the needs of the fish that you want. So on the other side, where you want a particular fish, let's say you want an Oscar, you need to research everything about the Oscar fish. What's the minimum size tank they need? How much water works well for them? What kind of food do they eat? And then go from there. In the case, like you might go to the pet store, you'll see Oscars. You can find little Oscars no more than an inch or two. Those are obviously juveniles, but once they grow to full-size adult, they're pretty large fish and they need a lot of room and they need a lot of water. So while you may be able to start off in a small tank, a 10 gallon, 20 gallon, an Oscar, they're quickly going to outgrow that tank. And definitely a 10 gallon tank is not suitable for a fully grown Oscar. So research your fish and then determine if that's the particular type of fish you really want. Basically, when they're going to be fully grown, will the tank that you have meet their needs as an adult? So when it comes to the aquarium itself, you need to get a lid, you need to get lighting. And the lighting mainly is for us. In most cases, these fish, when they're living out in the wild, there's natural sunlight. Depending on how deep they are, they might get some light, they might not get some light. There's a lot of mud and muck in the water there. There's a lot of plants, leaves growing and whatnot. So these lights are more for us, and also if you have live plants in there, then the lights are for the plants as well to help them grow. So the minimum basics for a tank are the tank itself, a lid, especially if you've got jumping fish that, occasionally they're just zipping around. They don't know, they go straight through. You don't want them landing out somewhere on the carpet, drying out, and you lost that fish. So you need lids, you need a light, and you need filtration and decorations. So things to consider with the tank is the weight. So these can be pretty heavy. You're looking at about 7 to 8 pounds per gallon of water, not including the decorations. Once you start adding decorations in, like gravel or sand, and any other things, any rocks or driftwood, whatnot, that weight starts to go up. So you need to have a stand that's sturdy enough, sufficient enough that will hold the weight of your tank. In this case, this is a custom built stand. It was built by myself and my cousin, and it holds this 55 gallon here fine. You can look at what the stores have. So I would recommend not using any furniture you have around the house. A lot of times we have these TV stands, we have these dressers, and it might, a tank might look great on there, but those stands, those TV stands, dressers, whatnot, they're not designed to hold this much weight. Depending on the type of wood or the type of material, especially if there's particle board, you've got water dripping on there, it's going to cause that wood to swell, and over time that wood swells, it's going to start to fail. Last thing you want is that tank, the entire stand collapsing, you lose all your fish, and you've got a lot of water all over your floor that's going to cause floor damage, carpet damage, whatnot. So get a stand that works for the tank. Get a proper stand. When you're going to the pet store, ask them what kind of stands do they have. If you're going to build a stand, there's plenty of guides on YouTube on how to build your own stand. It's not very hard. Get the lumber, if you get the lumber, you got the tools. Putting a stand together is not that difficult. And it's easy to make sure that that stand can handle more than just this tank. Like in this case, when we built this stand, we over-engineered it, so to speak. So it actually can hold much more weight than this, but it's perfect for this one. I don't want to deal with any major spills or any major tank accidents by going with a poorly made stand. So some things to consider with tank placement is, where is it located? What kind of light is it going to get in terms of the environment? What kind of exterior light? Like in this case, I do have this tank up to a window. I did paint the back black, so that does help keep the sun off the tank. I do have blinds over there if I need to close it. I usually don't close my blinds, they stay open. But as you can see, there's some algae growing in the tank. It's nothing major though. Usually, most I have to do is every couple of weeks, I'll scrape the front of the glass just to clean the algae off so we can view the fish. But other than that, even though I get sun in the afternoon over here, because I don't overfeed my tank, because I've got plants in the tank, and I haven't overstocked my tank, my algae is manageable. And in my opinion, some algae is good. It helps keep control on the nitrates, which can be toxic for your fish. So in terms of fish, you need to research the fish. What are the lifespan? What are the longevity? What are they like in terms of water conditions? Do they like hard water, soft water? And what are the temperature ranges? Most of the fish that we keep as fish keepers are tropical fish. So they are generally warmer, depending on where you're located, depending on the weather. In our case, we go through full 4 seasons. You've got a cold winter, hot summer, whatnot. And so especially in the wintertime, you need to keep the temperature up in the tank because your aquarium fish, they're used to warmer temperatures. If you get too low in the temperature, the fish will get stressed out and it will eventually kill them. So one of the important pieces of equipment with your fish tank is an aquarium heater. This is an example right here. It's a flue wall heater. This is designed for a 20 to 30 gallon tank. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, as these heaters are designed for specific sizes. You don't want to undersize them, so you don't want to get it just because it's cheaper. You don't want to get one that's suited for a 10 gallon, stick it in a 55 gallon and try it, and hope it's going to keep it warm. Problem you're going to run into is if you undersize the heater is that it's going to have to run too long. It's going to fail quicker, and anytime these fail, it can be catastrophic, especially if it sticks on. Now, if it's undersized, it's generally not going to be able to cook a larger tank like this. Like a 10 gallon heater is not going to be able to boil over a 55 gallon tank. But at the same time too, you don't need to go through one of these every 6 months because you undersized it. You also don't want to oversize them as well. So if you have a 55 gallon tank like I do over here, you don't want to get a 300 watt heater, which is designed for a 125 gallon tank. And while that will keep it warm, the one problem you might run into is if it sticks on, that will boil the tank. There are certain safety controllers that you can plug in with this. I've got one set up on this tank over here. I did do a video about aquarium heater safety, and I will leave a link for that down in the comment section below, so feel free to check that out after this video. But basically what that does is prevents the heater from going up above a certain level. You don't want to get too hot, and if it does go above a certain level, it will turn off the heater before the heater can overheat the tank. Another important thing that you need for your fish tanks is filtration. So with regards to filtration, you're looking at cleaning the water, as well as the filtration serves as a biological filter. So these tanks, since they're closed systems, we have to establish the biological filtration. There is a whole aquarium nitrogen cycle, basically, where any decaying food, any decaying plant matter, fish waste gets converted into ammonia. Ammonia is very toxic to fish. Even small amounts of ammonia can kill your fish. So you want to set up that nitrogen cycle. You want to get it up and running before you add any fish. There's a couple different ways to do that, and I've also covered a video for that too. I will leave a link for establishing a nitrogen cycle in your tank in the comment section below, so please check that out too as after you're done with this video. So when it comes to the filtration, it covers both mechanical as well as the biological. So there's different kinds of filters. You can get a sponge filter that's powered by a air pump, or you can get a mechanical filter that's got a motor in there and that basically pulls water in through an intake tube and puts it out through some either an outtake tube, or in the case of a hang-on filter, it'll just pour it directly into the tank. So one important aspect about these filters is they help create surface agitation. And the reason you want surface agitation is you want to make sure that there is oxygen being recycled into the tank. The fish are obviously consuming the oxygen, so you need a way to mix that oxygen back into the tank. So for instance, I've got a sponge filter over in the corner over there. It's powered with an air pump. That air pump basically pumps air into the tank. That air gets pushed through the water. It's also adding fresh air, fresh oxygen as the air bubbles are getting in contact with water. And as well as that air bubbles pull that water upward, that helps circulate the water in the tank. So the water below, where it might be low in oxygen, is being pulled up, it's going to the top, and it will help get exposed to the outside air at the top of the tank, replenish the oxygen inside the tank. In this tank here, I've got another internal filter, and this strictly is for mechanical and biological filtration. I do have the ability to adjust the angle of the water, so if I wanted to turn it upwards so it can at least pull the water from below, get it exposed to the top of the tank, so that the oxygen can get reabsorbed into the water, that can do that. But in this case, since I have that sponge filter run by the air pump, then this is strictly for mechanical purposes. This is an example of a sponge filter. This is a coarse sponge filter. The air pump line will plug in over here. You do have a riser tube that comes with this. The riser tube just simply mounts on here, and the riser tube just helps the water go up straight. And as the air bubbles pull the water up, they go through the filter here, and this also acts somewhat as a mechanical filter. This is a power filter, Penguin 150 bio wheel. This has a couple different ways of filtering. It has a filter pad, it has a bio wheel, whereas the bio wheel is more for the biological filtration. The bacteria grow on that. As the water passes on by, the bacteria will grab out any ammonia, any nitrites, and convert them into nitrate ultimately to help keep that cycle going and keep your fish healthy. Now, the main differences between something like a sponge filter compared to the mechanical filter that's got a motor pump in there is the flow rate of the water. With a sponge filter, your flow rate is going to be generally slow. In my tank, I've actually got both in here. These fish do not mind fast water. So this internal filter over here does push the water pretty fast. So the fish at the top over there, the cyprichromis, they actually enjoy that. They like swimming around in that. But if you've got fish that do not like fast moving water, or you've got plants that need slow moving water, then a sponge filter is going to be a better bet. So that's one thing to do in terms of researching your fish. Do your fish like fast moving water? In which case a mechanical filter with a motor is going to be better. Whereas if your fish prefer slow moving water and you've got plants, and there are some plants that will do very poorly in fast moving water, they'll die, they'll rot away. Whereas other plants like Anubias and Java Fern, like I have in this tank, they don't mind the fast moving water, and they worked out just fine. So research from your fish perspective. What do they like? What don't they like? Fast moving water, then if your fish prefer fast moving water, then a mechanical filter will work great. Whereas if your fish prefer slow moving water, or you're going to have some plants in there that don't like fast moving water, the sponge filter is going to work better for you. Another important thing to have are test kits for your aquarium. So like I mentioned before, you've got nitrites, you've got nitrates, you've got ammonia. You want to check those rates, especially when you're first starting out the tank. Things like ammonia, nitrite, if you've got fish in there, those are very harmful to your fish, and they can kill them pretty quickly depending on the sensitivity of your fish. So when you first establish your tank, you need to be testing on a regular basis. In my case, I used a no fish cycling method where I just added pure ammonia into the tank. Eventually the cycle got kick-started. There are some hardy fish you can add in there, but my opinion, why hurt the fish? Why stress the fish out? Just start a cycle without fish in there. It doesn't take too long. There's even bacteria starter cultures you can buy from your pet store. Throw that into the tank, let it help start that cycle. And once your test kits start reading 0 ammonia, 0 nitrite, then you know you're ready to start adding fish. So there's a couple different types of test kits. This is a reagent one. This one uses liquid drops that you put into a test tube with water, whereas this one over here, this is an Aquarium Co-op test strips. These are actually quicker compared to those with the liquid reagent one. You're looking at least 5 minutes per test. Once all the reagents have been mixed, it takes time. You've got to pull water out of there, put it into the test tube, add your reagents, mix it up, shake it, and wait 5 minutes, whereas these little dip strips here, you just pull a strip out, put it in for a couple seconds, and then wait about a minute, and then you can read results. So testing is important, especially when you have any illnesses or there's something going on with the tank you're not sure what. First thing you need to do is check your water parameters. Do you have a spike in nitrites? Do you have a spike in ammonia? That could be explaining the ill health of your fish. For water changes, when we are doing water changes, you usually need to use something like this. That's Seachem Safe. It's a powder additive you add to the water before putting it in the tank. It basically neutralizes any chlorine or chloramines in the water. Chlorine or chloramine are put into the water to keep bacteria out to prevent humans from getting sick, but the chlorine or chloramines can actually burn the gills of your fish. They can kill your fish. So you don't want to add direct water from your tap into the tank unless you've treated it first with Seachem or some of the other products that are designed to treat chlorine, chloramines in the water. Some of your fish do need supplements too. Like in this case, I use cichlid trace for my cichlids. It helps to add some essential minerals that benefit my fish. And I've actually noticed once I started adding these, the fish have started breeding. Whereas in the past, where I was just using my regular water, wasn't adding anything extra, the breeding behavior was not noticeable. Foods are another important thing for your fish. So when it comes to food, you need to research what your fish prefer to eat and what's going to be beneficial for them. Some fish, they're fine with flake. You can feed them flake all day long. Other fish prefer live food or frozen foods with high protein. But ultimately, you need to see what your fish need. If you feed high protein food to fish that need low protein, those fish are going to get bloated. They're probably going to die as a result. So you need to make sure that you're getting the food that you need for your fish and get a high quality food. So in this case here with my Tanganyikans, I feed them a variety of different foods. I've got pellets like this here. I've got flakes as well. I also do frozen food. And the wild fish do have a variety of food. There's a lot of different insects. They'll eat algae. They'll eat little detritus worms that happen to be floating in the water. So whatever they can get in their diet that help benefits them. So in my own case, I will rotate my food. The one I feed the most is the flake food. The fish eat that pretty heartily. They enjoy it. All the foods that I'm giving them, they enjoy. Similar type of thing when you're feeding your fish. If it's something that they don't like, they're not eating, it's just falling to the bottom, getting wasted, maybe that's not something they like. Maybe it's not something that works for them. Also monitor your fish. How do they look? Do they look healthy? Do they swimming around properly? Then the food you're feeding them is working well for them. So live plants are great with the fish tank. They help absorb excess nutrients in there. They take out the nitrates. They can also help with ammonia and nitrite, as well as they can be a great place where bacteria can settle and help process the waste in your tank to keep it healthy. Now, if you do want live plants in there, you also need to consider that with your fish. Not all fish are good with live plants. There are some fish out there that will eat your live plants. They think it's a snack, they think it's a meal, so they will start eating at your plants. They'll picking at your plants, digging them up, throw them around the tank and make an overall mess. So in those cases, fake plants might be needed if you just want decorations in there, and the real plants might not work. But if you've got fish in there who won't do that, then research the fish and see if the plants that you're gonna put in there work with them. Some plants do work with some fish. Some fish don't care. You can put real plants, you can put fake plants. They're not gonna bother either. But if you have fish in there where you know that they're gonna eat your plants, they're gonna destroy your plants, instead put your fake plants, put other decorations in there to make the tank appealing to you. So some of the main takeaways are: research your fish, research your tank. Start first with one or the other. If you know you want a particular type of fish, research that fish in particular. What size tank works best for them? What type of water parameters work best for them? Versus if you're getting a tank because it fits in a certain area, then research what type of fish will work best in that tank size. You don't want to overcrowd those tanks. You don't want to put a fish too large for that tank. Whereas the fish is going to suffer, your tank is going to suffer, you're going to dislike the hobby, and that's not a good thing. So please drop in the comments below if you have any questions about setting up a tank for the first time. I will try and respond to each of them. If you have any topics for a future video, also drop that in the comment section below. I'd be happy to consider that for future videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.